thank you. All right, so I know I'm standing between you and happy hour, so we'll keep this moving. So, as you saw from several of the presentations today, we looked at different areas around the advances of crypto, of tokenizations, around things like, let's look at the different ways that we can use credits. Let's look at the ways we can use different technologies. What I want to talk about today is, kind of get back to the basics. What are enterprise businesses doing to build trust with blockchain? What are some of the basics of blockchain? So who am I, and why am I here speaking in front of you today? So again, thank you very much for the invitation from the Minnesota Blockchain Association. And a little bit of my history, that was noted. I've been in the industry, technology, cloud, architect, blockchain space for probably close to 15 years. I spent 11 of those years at the helm of IBM, with my last position there as the CTO in what they call the comm sector, entertainment, media, telco, and energy and utilities. I spent a lot of time in the gaming space, so I did do a lot of work with things like NFT, blockchain, gamified aspects that went into the blockchain space as well. But importantly, a lot of world leaders dependent on my knowledge and my information and my acumen around things about what can we do with blockchain. Like we saw the earlier video, what happened in Kenya, very important. Presidents and prime ministers from China, Africa, South America would ask, what can we do with blockchain? What is this shiny diamond, right, that is going on with this tool and technology of blockchain? That's why a lot of people reach out to me and ask, how can we use blockchain? What are some of the basics? I mean, I have to, if I'm a politician, I have to support my constituents. And how do we talk with this shiny diamond of blockchain or NFTs or cryptos and make it make sense, right? That was some of the basic asks. So as I mentioned, we had the hype, the bubbles that went on. You had things such as, we had the internet bubbles, we had the cloud bubbles, and we had the blockchain / crypto / NFT bubbles that were going on. And so, in a good way, things have kind of settled in a bit, right? So we had the bubbles that happened in 2018, and we had the things that are going on, crypto, digital currency, NFTs, and all the hype, if you will, that was going on. Yet, what I want to do is not downplay all the work that was going on with cryptos and NFTs and digital currencies, because those are all very important. You saw how farmers can help themselves, how people can get water, how things can go into mining and strategy, how people can work with NFTs and stable coins for lumber in areas that may not have lumber accessibility. So what I want to do is, in talking about some of the basics around blockchain, what are these buzzwords? Like, what is provenance, right? What are things about stability? What are things about contracts? What are things about provenance that make the importance of blockchain? And really kind of have a discussion, kind of slow us down and look at some of the basics, why the blockchain is such an effective tool to make these things happen. So you're probably all familiar with Bitcoin. I don't want to give a Bitcoin 101 class today, but what I want to talk about is looking at things like blockchain is kind of a reverse thought process of Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin is open, Bitcoin is public, Bitcoin has a lot of exposure, people can see what's going on. But when you think about enterprise blockchain, it's a little bit different thought, because we're talking about security between schools, between hospitals, between universities, between banks, between consumers, right? So going backwards again is looking at some of the problem. In business, you have all the things that are going on. Banking, you need auditing, you need healthcare, you need safety. So all the problems are very expensive and inefficient, right? Like, for example, on one of your slides, we're looking at, Bank of Mellon. Right? Bank of Mellon needed to do a huge thing around tracking and tracing when they had to have their whole bank audited when they received, $30 billion during the bank crash? So now we're looking at things like stress testing and risk mitigation that a bank needs to do. Imagine doing that all on a blockchain. So they can run it through the blockchain process. The feds can walk into the bank and say, pull up the report. I want it in 10 minutes. And the Bank of New York Mellon would have to do that report because they had to meet the requirements of risk testing, of looking at stress testing, of all the things that the feds require because they were given $30 billion. Right? Very same thing is, in a minute here I'll talk about some of the work we're doing at GMG, but taking all those inefficient, expensive variables that are thrown at you, put them on a blockchain, and use the speed, efficiency, and the cloud and the blockchain that was known for Bitcoin, do that same on blockchain. So what we did was, on the blockchain, is taking all of those pieces, right? The bank records from Bank of Mellon, the Fed records, the records that need to be happening in a government law firm, the regulatory records, all brought together on the blockchain because you are able to secure these items and provide them to who needs to see it and those who do not. Now, I just want to provide a very simple architecture. I know there's probably folks like myself, propeller heads in the crowd that enjoy architecture. I admit I'm a geek. I enjoy what I do. I enjoy pushing the envelope and trying different things. So as you look at all of the elements that go into the visibility of the blockchain, vice versa, or the non-visibility on the enterprise blockchain, you have all the folks that actually have access into that fabric, right? So for example, if I am a shipper or a supply person, I may need to know about the temperature of my truck, right? Let's say I'm dealing with Schneider Trucking. I need to make sure that Schneider is able to keep that carrot or that beef or that milk at the proper temperature. So my IoT devices may be sending me access to my blockchain real time. I can pull that information up real time. Or maybe I'm working with some AI that needs to be in there, right? Maybe I'm working with some customer information or some interactive customer information to bring that into AI. I would say, hey, I want to ensure that what's the sentiment of my customers? How are they responding? And that information can be stored on the blockchain. So we saw some snippets on the last presentation, but let me dive in a bit here. Here's a project I worked on in the past with the UN and the WFP, where we put together essentially a life again for Syrian refugees, right? So you leave Syria in the middle of the night, your passport's there, it may be under a tank somewhere, what have you. You and your family and children had to get out now, right? No more ID. What does the UN do? What do other governments do? How do you get on a plane? So we use blockchain. Now there's a term that some of you may be familiar with, or maybe not. It's KYC, know your customer, right? That's one of the true benefits of using blockchain is understanding who you're serving and how that data is being collected. So then we get into elements of security and safety on the blockchain. So I'm going to run a quick video, very short, just to give you a sense of what happens. And you saw snippets earlier, but let's dive in here a bit.
Go to one of the supermarkets in the camps and redeem their entitlements.
You go and buy something when you need it at the time that is suitable.
هلا بروح مثلا بدي اشتري مثلا اغراض بتسوق بالمول يعني اغراضي كلها بفوت عند الكاشير مثلا بدق اغراضي كلها على الكاشير على اسمه بقول لي اعطيني عينك بس طلع بالكاميرا اطلع فيه يعني بعطيني يعني بعمل كبسه للعين او كذا بصورها يعني للعين وبقول لي هاي اغراضك.
They would scan their iris, that iris gets verified against the UNHCR database, and we get back a code for that person, and it's that code that triggers the private key on our system building blocks that allows the transaction to go through.
Using registration.
Okay, now I'll finish that sentence for her, is that all that information was going on the blockchain. And when you think about it, is that ID, purchasing, so I'm being glib here, but I'm being serious too, is that he does not have his Target Red card, right? It's back wherever it's at. Or wherever credit card his family had, they don't have it anymore. So everything that's being created for the refugees and those going across borders can be done very easily on the blockchain. Think about the security needs. They're scanning eye and fingers to create that identity. That's all needs to be secure. That's what we're talking about, things like enterprise blockchain for that need. Now, I mentioned too about when you don't want to be in the news, right? So you're seeing a lot of things going on, such as cucumbers and salmonella and bad lettuce. Right? Greg mentioned that when he introduced our company, GMG, a bit. That's one of the things that we're working on in depth, right? Is that food safety and challenges. So there are things about, you need to navigate through recalls and food products and safety. That's a lot of white noise. That's a lot of business moving parts that need to happen. Right? So for example, let's say something does happen in the supply chain. Maybe some bad tomatoes snuck through, right? Normally you'd see it in the news, maybe a couple days later, or maybe you'd find out yourself, have to go to the hospital. On the blockchain, that response can be done instantly. As soon as that rotten tomato is found and they know it's bad, everybody can be communicated with through the app instantaneously. Think about the safety around that, think about the ease of presentation around that, and to think about the ways that will save your company from being in the news when you don't want to be in the news. So I talked a bit about the differences and the comparative between blockchain and crypto and whatnot, but I think it's very important if someone is thinking about doing a blockchain project or a blockchain effort is, what type of platform do I want to choose, right? If I'm going to be serving enterprise clients, how secure do I need to make it, right? So all of these components here are for our knowledge to make sure that we can secure something, keep it safely, and still be effectively done in the cloud. So real quick, and I know my time is short here, but real quick is, my company, GMG, CTO as a board advisor, is that my team here are all the folks that have lots of years of background, not only in technology, but also in the business transaction, experience in the business, the different lines of business. So, please stop by our booth later after you've had a refreshment and come visit with us. I would say between our company, we probably have 45, 50 years of business experience, including technology at GMG from all walks of life. So please come by and see us.
All right, thanks so
Yes.
much, Bill.
Thank you.